going through the book of James, and uh, I'm excited, I'm pumped, I'm ready to see how God's going to speak this to us today. But overall, how's your week been? Good, everybody been good, rolling. We came off of we had vacation. We went not to vacation this week, but the week before. And how many of you know that when you go on vacation, when you get back is like the worst thing ever when you're an adult? When you're a child, it's like the best thing. And still, it's all right, you know, because you ain't got nothing to worry about. But when you got work that stacks up on you and life that stacks up on you, it's like, man, I went away for a week, but I'm paying for it the next week, and I'm trying to catch up. So that's how I felt this week, as I felt like I did 3 weeks of work in 1 week, and trying and prepping and getting this stuff. I'm talking about the job that I do outside of the church. It was crazy, but all in all, I was ready for Sunday and ready to share the word. God is faithful, amen. And so, if you can get your Bibles open, we're actually starting chapter 3 today. So we're moving on up. We're getting through. I think how it's going to go, I'm not going to reveal it to you yet. But the Lord has spoke to me, and I'm ready for our new sermon series. We're going to take a break from James right after our 1-year celebration, August 20th. So August 27th, we'll be starting a brand new sermon series. But if you want to know what that sermon series is, you got to make sure you're here for our 1-year anniversary, because we're going to announce it there and get started with it. So I'm just excited for that series. I'm telling you, I'll give you one hint. If you felt spiritually dry at any time lately, or we all go through seasons that are spiritually dry, it's going to be talking about how to handle those situations and handle those lives, and it's good. So I'm excited for that. But right now we're still in James, and so if we don't finish James by then, which I'm not sure if we will or not, we'll just, as soon as that sermon series is over, we're going to pick back up, because I promise you I'm not going to leave you dry and only study 75% of the book. We're going to get through James, and you're going to have your verse-by-verse expository teaching on it. So we're going into James chapter 3, and as many of you have known, as we've looked at James, he's going to start talking about something. He's going to start talking about your tongue. Look at your neighbor and say your tongue. Maybe you can show him your tongue if you want. That's kind of weird, but you can. We're going to be talking about the tongue, and really how dangerous your tongue can be, how dangerous it is. And if you look and if you've seen and you've journeyed with us through the first few chapters of James, you'll notice something. You'll notice that he talks about the words we speak and how we act mean a lot. He really does use a lot of words about the things that we say, and then he even takes a whole chapter right here, not a whole chapter, but half of a chapter right here to explain the tongue, to explain how dangerous it is. And it shows that, remember, he's writing this to the Jewish Christians that are dispersed out over the oppression. So he's noticing a problem that's kind of happening in the church right now. He's noticing, it says that during this time that this community was in conflict. They were fighting with each other. And how many of you know that when it comes to a fight, what's always the leading instigator before a punch is thrown? The words you speak, right? And you look back at anything. Anytime before you watch the YouTube videos of people fighting, before they ever get to throwing a punch, somebody's going to say something first. I mean, especially if you're following the Floyd Mayweather-Conor McGregor fight that's coming up. I mean, all it is right now is press conferences of them speaking against each other about how much they're going to whip the other person, right? Because it's the words. The tongue is the instigator. It's the instigator in all conflict. It starts off the conflict. And so James is tackling the fact that this community is going through conflict and people are arguing amongst each other, and he's trying to share them wisdom on it. And even after reading it, he didn't even really give application to it, like how to fix your tongue. Because basically at the end of it, there's no way to tame your tongue. Isn't that great news? There's no way to tame your tongue. But there's a difference because if you could tame your tongue, then you would be a perfect person, basically. And there's no way to be a perfect person. But I do believe in discipline. And I do believe that as we study this today, we'll notice something, because it's kind of like this. It's where we got to get is perspective, is understanding just how dangerous the tongue is. It's like this. When I was like, and my mother's not in here, so it's good to talk about right now. When I was like a senior and I got my Mustang for the first time, my parents had made this deal with me. If I made A's and B's all through high school, they would get me a car. And even though it looks like it's like a cool car and stuff, we got it for like $10,000 or $9,000 for like with 26,000 miles. It's an awesome deal. And so we got it, and I had this Mustang, and I was a young teenager with a Mustang that wanted to go fast, right? And so I get on not the interstates. They had some roads that are around my area that are just straight for days, and I would just hit it. I mean, before my Mustang, I had a Toyota, and within the first month of me getting my getting my license, I was driving on that road. That was a 92 Toyota that could barely be put together, and I had that thing going 75, and it was going rah, 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 rah. It was like shaking, like I was about to fall apart or something. And so I always like to go fast, but I got this Mustang, and I hit those roads. And I remember the adrenaline that would come in when I hit like 115, 120. Yes, I just admitted it. I tried to top that car out, and I hit 120 one time, and I felt like I was just gliding on the road, like almost like I was hovering over it. It was an incredible feeling. As I got older, a few years older, I got a little smarter, and I started realizing, man, what would happen if I'm driving that fast and a deer jumps out of these woods, because it's all woods right there. Or if I'm driving this fast and a dog, my car's small, it just take a little dog to come out, and I try to move and skirt out the way. Actually, if it was I'm sorry, but if I'm going that fast, I probably wouldn't even see it. But it would still do something to me, and I'll probably end my life right there. And I started thinking about the consequences of what could happen. And when I understood the consequence of what could happen, what did I do? I fixed it. I started going the speed limit. I stopped driving that fast because it just wasn't worth it. And I believe that a lot of things in life, when it comes to discipline, is the reason that they don't get fixed sometimes is because we don't realize the consequences to them, or the danger to them. But that if we truly understand the wisdom and understand the consequences that can come, and realize that we can then discipline what we need to discipline. It's the same thing with the tongue. The tongue can cause so much damage. So much damage. And that's what James is going to talk about. And today it's not about applying how I can talk better. It's more of, let's see how dangerous it is, so that maybe we can gain a higher understanding and a higher wisdom to know that I need to discipline my tongue more, because it can cause that much damage. When I can realize the consequences of it, then I can fix the problem. I can be better disciplined. So James chapter 3 starts in verse 1. We're going to read through 12 verses. And I'm going to tell you, James gets pretty intense. So I might try to be intense with him, but it's not at any of you here. I'm just trying to be a good author or narrator. James chapter 3, verse 1. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers. Yep. For you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, also able to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their bodies as well. Look at the ships also. They are so large and are driven by strong winds, and they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and every bird of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind. But, look at your neighbor and say, but but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it, we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursings. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? And can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither a salt pine yield fresh water. Man, a lot of talk about how dangerous the tongue can be and how dangerous it can be. So if you're taking notes, which I hope that you are, you can title this message today, Keep It Zipped. Keep it zipped. Look at your neighbor and say, keep it zipped. You ever remember growing up as a child, or maybe you've got to be on the other end of this and actually tell your child this, but I remember sometimes that my mother or my father would start getting on my nerves a little bit, and I would start back talking them some, and they would look at me and say something like this: "You better zip it right now." Or my dad would be, "You're about to get the belt." My mom would be, "I'm about to tell your dad to get you the belt." Right? And so you better zip it up. And why would they tell me something like that, right? They would tell me something like that because I was saying something in my mouth. I was saying something to them that was dishonoring. I was saying something to them that was back-talking that I shouldn't have been doing to them. And so they were basically looking at me and say, "You need to keep it zipped right now. Keep it zipped. And don't do that." And so James is right here. He's talking to this conflict. He's talking about the how he's like, man, you guys got to understand the tongue. Because the reason you have so much conflict in your churches right now is because you don't understand how to speak to one another. You're constantly fighting. You're constantly arguing. I mean, when you look at Christians in our world today, sometimes I see more Christians fighting on Facebook than I do anybody else. Unbelievers. It's like, for some reason, we have to always argue and try to dictate arguments, and it's always led by the instigator, the tongue. The tongue is the thing that is doing that. And so James is breaking that down so that we can walk out of these doors today knowing how important it is to discipline our tongue. In the first two verses, he gets serious right away. In the first two verses, look at this. He says, "Not many of you should become teachers." Right off the bat. Because he's noticing one thing is, I guess during this time, a lot of people were wanting to be teachers. A lot of them were coming through and they were wanting to be, and they were what they would call the wannabe teachers. You see, you have people in life that will be wannabe something, but not understand the responsibility that will come with it. You know, so, for instance, me getting up here to preach, one day when I stand before the Lord, I'm going to be held accountable for everything that I've spoken from this pulpit. I'm going to be held accountable right here. And if I'm going to be held accountable like that, then I need to be as truthful, as have integrity, have honesty from this pulpit, from what the Lord speaks to me. Because teachers, the reason that teachers are graded with stricter judgment is because you're teaching something that people are listening to, that people can take with them. That more and more people that are listening to you, I mean, it has authority, it has power to dictate how somebody can live their life, what you speak to them and what you teach them and what you show them. And so he starts off right away saying that not many of you should become teachers, because you need to understand that if you're going to become a teacher, you're going to have some responsibility. So I'm just showing you that in the passage today because I'm not shying off. If the Lord called you to be a preacher, if the Lord's called you to teach education or anything like that, go do it. Do not be scared because of this verse. When you go do that, just understand the responsibility that you have. You have a big responsibility of the people that you're teaching to, a huge responsibility to show them truth, to teach truth to them, to teach love and joy to them, to teach them in a way where they don't grow up with hate, where they don't grow up with these fruits like that. So he says, keep it zipped. Because and then he even I like how James is right here in verse 2, because he was never somebody who preached at you. Like me, I never want to preach at you. I want to bring us all in together, because he says, for we, he's telling about himself too. For we all stumble. We all stumble in many ways. And then he gets a little sarcastic. He said, because if somebody doesn't stumble in what he says, then he's a perfect man. But there's no way to be perfect. So you're going to stumble sometimes. You're going to fall sometimes. You're going to make some things happen where you're going to stumble. It's just all comes to how disciplined can you make your tongue. How disciplined can you make your tongue? And so he talks about not being a teacher. So my charge to you today in that first two verses is, if the Lord's called you to preach, to teach a life group class, to teach an equip class, to teach education somewheres or something like that, realize the responsibility that comes behind it, and that you have a responsibility to teach truth behind that. And that you'll be greater with greater judgment. I think what James is trying to do here is he's trying to basically get the wannabes out. And maybe that they would understand if there's greater judgment. Oh, I don't want to do that then if there's greater judgment. And they'll get out. He wants to wean out the fakes and get the people who really want to do it. Because the people who really want to do it will have the responsibility to do it. And so that happens. And then you go into verse 3. And he starts to really start teaching about, it's awesome. Remember how James always draws these practical illustrations for us? We talked about that last week. He always tells you, like, how something should be done, and then he talks about the practical implications to it. Like, he draws you a picture so that you can see what it's like. And he draws you, he gives you 3 examples, basically, of how powerful the tongue is. 3 examples. And he says that one of them, it's like a bit to a horse, right? A horse is a huge creature, right? How much does a horse weigh? I don't even know. Does somebody know? Like a couple hundred pounds? Like they're huge. But the cool thing about a horse, or the weird thing, it can be even weird, is the fact that that huge beast can be controlled by something as small as a bridle, right? A little bridle that you put in there, if you don't know what that is something that, even if they're riding horses, they put it around in their mouth so that they can guide them where they need to go. And so something as small as that can guide a horse that is huge. In the same way that he talks about a rudder. A little bitty rudder, and sometimes rudders aren't small, but compared to a ship, it's a small thing on the ship. That the rudder guides where the ship goes in the sea. That something that small guides what's happening. He even goes and he talks about the fact that a small fire, that the tongue is like a small fire to a wildfire. I heard the story one time, this is crazy, that one of the wildfires in California a few years, you know how it got started? A grasshopper jumped onto an exhaust pipe, caught on fire, jumped onto dry ground, and started a wildfire. Something as small as that caused so much destruction. That's the crazy thing, because our tongue is so small compared to our body, but it has the power to control and dictate where we go in life. You can't decide to go to work and be somebody who always shares and talks negative things to your coworkers or your boss and expect to get promotions, right? Your tongue will guide where you and dictate where you head in life. So you have this little bitty thing that can cause so much damage and it's like, I mean, you can look at it anyway. You have prideful people who will talk such a big game but never back it up with actions, right? It's just it's the tongue. It's so small, but yet it has the ability. It's crazy because it's the key to our body's control, but at the same time, it's the key to our body's destruction. Our tongue. And it's realizing the danger that comes with it. Proverbs 15, verse 4 says it like this: the soothing tongue is a tree of life, But a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. That a tongue that speaks life, a soothing tongue, will speak life. That's the kind of person I want to be. I don't want to be a person that's in conflict and the moment that my anxiety builds up, or the moment that my anger builds up, that I start shouting words that I'll eventually regret. Don't want to be that person. If I'm that person, then I'm going to push people away from me because a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. And people don't want to be around you if you're crushing them. But a soothing tongue is the tree of life. And if we as faith-filled believers have a duty to be people who speak life, to be Christians who speak life, to be a person that wherever I'm at in life, I'm not saying something in a hurtful way. I want to speak life to the person that I'm talking with, because little things can cause havoc in your life. You ever stepped on a Lego? Right? Oh my Lord. Well, my little brother used to have Legos, and I remember walking in the living room one day, and he left them out. I thought I was going to have to amputate my foot. And it hurt so bad. And I look at it, and it's like a piece that's like this big. It's that much. And it just reminds me just how much something so small, like a kidney stone. Who's ever had a kidney stone in here? You know when they pull those things out, they're like the size of like your pinky fingernail? Like maybe smaller than that. But yet that thing will make you get the fetal position in the passenger seat of a car, squealing to get to the hospital. It's little things that can cause so much destruction. And the reason I keep staying right there and staying on this is, remember, James didn't really give us application on how to fix or tame this tongue. I think it more comes from the point of if we realize just how danger it is. If we realize just how much our words matter and the things that we speak, then we can gain a higher understanding and a higher wisdom to speak more carefully. Remember how we talked about, I think it was in James chapter, let me look at this. Maybe it was in James chapter 1 or 2, and he said, be slow to anger. Yep, slow to anger, and he says, be quick to hear and slow to what? Speak. Quick to anger, and so we talked about that a few weeks ago. And that all goes down to the thing that if I get super angry and I get super mad and I start shouting things, the first thing that I'm going to do is my tongue that's going to cause all the havoc. It's the little thing in my life. Sometimes, I'm telling you, it's crazy. The tongue can be sometimes the reason of a divorce. It can be sometimes the reason that a functional family turns into a dysfunctional family. It can be the reason that it's the reason that our political nation is just under fire all the time. It's the tongue. It causes so much destruction, and it just comes with understanding and realizing that. Pull up verses 5 and 6 for me. Over there. Because I want to stick on this. That it says that if we put... So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set aflaze by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire. It's a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among other members. And it's crazy. It says it stains the whole body. Stains the whole body. That if we have a perverse tongue, it literally stains our whole body. That people know you by the way you speak. People understand you and see you. And people are judgers. Let's just be real. The Bible tells us not to judge, but people are judgers. And people will judge you based off how you speak, how you talk. And if we have a tongue that doesn't understand that we have to speak life, and that we can't hold our tongue and we're just ready to tell anybody off. If you ever got cut off in New Orleans traffic, you're just ready to shout that person down with a few colorful words, then we realize that the responsibility we have as Christians to speak life. Because if we can't hold our tongue, then what we're basically doing is we're staining our whole body. We're staining our whole body and causing our whole body to go such a different direction. And because words have the power to do that very thing. They have the power to set on fire the entire course of life. I thought that was so heavy when I read that. That literally our tongue can dictate our way of life. I've read one time in this article that medical problems, for example, that most people that face medical problems are negative people in general. They speak negative words, they have negative thinking, and then when they get very sick, they just think it's the end of the world and get really negative in those times. And that negative thinking, man, that will start to break you down to where you feel like, what's the point? What's the point? And I bring that up to say basically the fact, to approve what he's saying right here, that our tongue has the ability to dictate our way of life. That if we can be positive even when we're under stress, if we can be positive even when we're under conflict, if we can be positive and slow to speak and speak in wisdom and speak life and have that positive thinking, then even when we get against the wall and our back's against the wall, man, we're ready to go. We still have that positive life. We're still speaking life, understanding that I don't want to speak death. And so he talks about the implications of that. And it dictates the way of life, and it can set on fire by hell. I mean, it's crazy. I think it can, what I can say too about words, and I think what you can say as well, is the impact that they can have on your life, on somebody else's life. I don't know about you, but I can remember where I was, how old I was, and who was around the moment somebody told me something that was very negative. When I was 5 years old, I'm not going to tell you where, when, blast them or anything like that. I was in a specific spot. I had a dream. I wanted to be a professional basketball player. So I loved basketball, and I wanted to be a professional basketball player, and I was telling this person I was going to be a professional basketball player. And they looked at me and said, "You'll never go farther than high school basketball." Like, just straight, bam. I remember that to this day. To this day, I remember where I was, the people around me, who spoke that to me, how old I was, the details, because you remember those words. You remember words that are aimed at you to hurt you. You'll remember them. And you'll remember them a lot more than you'll remember the words that somebody might have given that were encouraging you, but also at the same time you do remember the times that you heard something super encouraging that uplifted your day, and I remember when this person did that. Man, it's crazy that our words have the ability to etch themselves in somebody's history and dictate their course of life. It's crazy that you could speak negative into somebody's life and start a small fire that could eventually turn into a forest fire because they believe it and it dictates their way of life. You see, I keep bringing this up just so that you can realize the dangers of the tongue, so that you can realize and understand that, man, if I have the ability to speak something into somebody's life and etch it into their history, then I have to speak life. Man, I don't want to be the person that there's somebody that's close to us that remembers the person when she was in school, remembers the exact person, how old she was, and everything when that person looked at her and told her to go home and kill herself. I mean, I just told her that. And it dictated the way she lived life for years from that very own thing, because it was a small fire that was placed, and there was probably other things that happened to keep that fire rolling and going. Man, it's crazy to know that within our body, and because of the sinful nature of our world, that our tongue can cause that much damage. That's why it's that much more important, that we're so careful about what we say and that we speak life wherever we are. And wherever you are, speak life. You have a responsibility as a faith-filled believer to speak positivity and speak life into people's lives, realizing what can happen. And then James gets into this last part, and this part, guys, it punched me in the face. Like, it gutted me. When I read it, I was like, wow, that with the same mouth that you come here and you worship the Lord with, that you pray to the Lord with, is the same mouth that you will go curse somebody after. It's the same mouth. The most hypocritical thing in our body is our tongue. It's crazy. It's the most hypocritical thing in our body. And it's the power of what can happen. And where this happens mostly, when I was reading this passage, can you bring that up, verse 7? It says, for every kind of beast and bird and reptile and sea creature can be tamed, and has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It's a restless evil, and it's full of deadly poison. It's this verse that kills me. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people. We curse people who are made in the likeness of God. Gossip. Gossip is it. Man, it's so easy to get with a group of friends and talk about the person that's not there. With that same mouth that you're talking about that person that's not there is the same mouth you were at church on Sunday worshiping the Lord with. And James is saying, man, you realize the dangers of the tongue. You realize how powerful it can be. Ephesians 4:29 says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up, that it may benefit them. You know how you stop gossiping? When you hear a conversation that's going on about somebody else, you ask yourself, is this benefiting the other person? If it's not benefiting them, then you should do what? Keep it zipped. Right? Keep it zipped. Don't talk. Get out of it. Because it's not going to benefit that. It's not going to benefit them, so I'm not going to be involved in that. It's because that with that mouth, we have the ability to not only bless the Lord, but to curse our neighbor. And the danger that can come with it has to be realized in order for it to be disciplined. That's the bottom line of what today's message was. He talked 12 verses of really about the same idea. And so it's hard for me to break down every verse for you and show you different things, but really he talked about the same idea. The tongue can't be tamed. You're going to stumble. You're going to mess up. You're going to say some things sometimes that are negative. But the idea today is that if you're a person that's always negative and always speaking out of frustrations and always speaking negativity, then you can realize that, man, I've probably caused a lot of people hurt over the years. And I've probably caused so many people hurt because of the things I've said. And when I said those things, man, I wasn't representing Christ. So I need to scale back. I need to realize what that's doing and start taming it. Start disciplining it as much as I can. Because it can cause so much havoc. It's not going to cause, it's not going to cause just so much havoc in your life. It's going to cause havoc in other people's lives. And I never want to be a person that is etched in somebody's history because of something negative I said. But rather be a person who is known that maybe because of my encouragement, because of something I spoke positively over their life, that they moved forward in a better direction. Don't you want to be that person? I want to be that church. I want to be that church that when somebody's been told they ain't worth it their whole life, they come sit here and know that they're worth it, that they're loved. I want to be that church that people see. When I talk about church, I'm not talking about the building. I'm talking about this group of people right here. Be a church that people look at and say, wow, they're always so positive. They speak life. And they mean it. They're real. So today was a simple message of learning how dangerous our tongue is. so that we can better discipline it and move forward into what the Lord has for us as a church. We got our 1-year anniversary coming up. I'm excited. Some of you in here have been with us since day one. And you've almost been with us through a whole year of ministry. And we've seen many victories. And we're seeing God open the doors for year 2, for some cool opportunities that are coming up. And I'm pumped. I'm excited. I know moving forward today, maybe there's some people that you've hurt with your words that are still in your life. Man, go ask for forgiveness. Tell them sorry. Sometimes you got to be the bigger man and do that. Ask for forgiveness. Ask for the Lord to lead you and guide you in that and give you wisdom in that. Because next week what we're going to be talking about is wisdom from above. We're going to be talking about how to get wisdom from above. And really, I could have probably talked about that a little bit today, more into it. Because the answer to controlling and disciplining our tongue comes from the wisdom above that he talks about. Understanding those consequences, that when we speak bad things, when we speak death, what they can cause. So I don't know about you today. I know we might all seem a little tired, a little quiet, but I know one thing, that I'm just going to leave here encouraged today and know I need to speak life. That the tongue is dangerous, man. I'm going to speak life. And I'm going to pray that the Lord would guide us and give us opportunity to speak life, an opportunity to be somebody in somebody's life that we etch ourselves in history, in their history, not by something negative we spoke, but something positive we spoke. God, I thank you for what you're doing, Lord. You're an incredible God. You're an awesome God. We thank you, Lord, for sharing your word with us and learning just how dangerous the tongue can be. God, I pray that, Lord, if it's us that are dealing with that lets our tongue get out of control too many times, that you would help us to have the perspective to realize how dangerous it is and that it needs to be disciplined. God, give us